Welcome back to Family Talk. I'm Deb DeYoung. Joining us is Dr. Jean Clinton from McMaster University. Dr. Clinton, let's talk about the stress our kids face day to day and how they can best deal with it. In the past, you've mentioned that every generation is different and that kids today are under more stress than the previous generation. What are the main sources of this stress?
Well, I think that kids now have more pressure, and pressure can lead to stress. So if we're thinking about the teen years in high school, so to do well, to get onto the university that you want to get to, first of all, you have to have terrific marks. Then you realize, oh, it's pretty expensive, so the kids have to take a part-time job. And as they're taking a part-time job, of course, the final exam is happening and you get called in to take a shift that you have to do. And then you find out, not only do you have to study hard, you have to have money, but you also have to be a well-rounded student. So you have to have done all this volunteer work. So the stress, the pressure, as our university has gone up, as our master's programs have gone up, the pressure on kids is absolutely boiling point very, very often. And we've got Ontario surveys that indicate their stress has gone up. So pressure sometimes is good. When does stress get into troublesome stress? And that is when they feel overloaded, that they don't get the balance of positive relationships that help you manage that and have strategies to cope. So I think as a society, we're experiencing much more stress day to day, like who doesn't talk about that? And our teenagers are the canaries in the minefield who are telling us there's too much stress and less ways of turning to have it coped well with.
So what role does stress play in the developing brain? And does the brain or the prefrontal cortex of a child or teen or adult under stress look different?
Yes. So again, great exciting times. What we are now learning is embellishing what we knew before, much deeper. What we now know about the impact of stress. So when we have a threat, right? So back in the day, our cave ancestors, when there was a threat, our body goes into action to make sure you're safe, even before your thinking brain does. And it releases adrenaline. Your brain sends signals, release adrenaline so you can run. Through the amygdala, this fight or flight center. It also sends a signal to release cortisol. Cortisol is a great hormone. It's our stress hormone. We need it for the energy to keep running. We need it for healing. But it also affects the new learning area of the brain called the hippocampus. And what science is showing us is that high levels of stress, when it leads to persistent lots and lots of cortisol, that hippocampus, new learning and memory, gets shut down. So new learning cannot happen. That's one. Huge. It's why schools now are, thank goodness, engaging even more and looking at engaging students, trying to diminish the stress. But the other big thing is that high stress level on the hippocampus and on how you react to stress affects the rest of your body system, your immune system, how you respond to disease later. So in fact, we're finding that what happens in these years is setting the stage for later disease. We are learning so much about stress. It's a bit frightening, but also liberating, because now we really have to think about how we can help kids deal with this stress as well as us.
So are higher levels of stress making today's kids less equipped to make the right decisions than, let's say, their parents were at the same age?
It's a good question. We don't have any evidence to suggest that they're less equipped. I would say we have more, our young people have more challenging decisions to make in a community that has less relationship. So there is before I could turn to my uncle, my aunt, and say, like, what did you do? I would have had lots of conversations. And I think the poverty of relationships, that so many of us experience now in this day and age, means that kids have less people to turn to in terms of coping, in terms of managing stress. So I don't think it's necessarily a brain function change between parents and kids, but that the social fabric has changed significantly. So kids don't have as many allies or people to bounce off ideas as they did before. That in itself leads to stress that might have been tolerable up to toxic stress. And that's when we really worry about the brain damage.
So how do we recognize when our kids are under too much stress? And how do we help them deal with it?
Yeah. Well, I think that we need to, first of all, and the same theme always, Deb, with me, is you have to have an open, respectful relationship so that if you're worried, you're free to say, man, what's going on? I'm really noticing you're not sleeping as well. You seem to be more irritable. You're not eating as well. Like, what's going on? So we need that respectful relationship. But we also need education to be helping the kids recognize when they're under stress. So parents, I think, another role they should be playing is asking the school, so what kind of education is going on about mental health and well-being? Like what can we do as a community to say all kids are our kids? So parental pressure to do that kind of thing is really important. But I think the key is the relationship. So to be able to say, you're really, I'm really noticing this. What can we do to help? How can I be part of the solution? Too often we're part of the problem because we tell them, stop doing that, get off the phone, don't be instant messaging at the same time as you're on the computer as you're trying to do your homework. We need to have a different relationship that's a connecting before controlling.
So let's get back to your premise that every generation is different. It's not just the generation of teens that are different, right? The generation of parents is different too, and I've heard you say the culture of parenting has changed. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I learned a lot from one of my colleagues who teaches at a college here, and she talked about the different generations and what their focus has been and what, in very general terms. You can't say it's true of every person. When I was a kid, musical chairs, you took away a chair. Now, oh my God, are you kidding? My child, we'll have a loser. No, we don't have winners and losers. We have winners and participants, right? So that culture of parenting changes how we interact with our kids, right? So we want, to be independent when mums, that big move into the workforce. So we valued independence. Well, independence is great, but it may be that what kids really need is relationship. But we don't have Nona, we don't have Nana, we don't have the culture of community helping bring this to, to a solid, this is all right, right? So the culture changes very much how we view and interact.
So this last question then is one you've raised yourself in the past. Why is it that some families, when faced with serious stresses and challenges to their well-being, manage to cope well, while other families facing similar situations don't?
Yes, well, this is a whole area of study called family resilience. What is it that helps you as a family deal with tough times? And how is it that even within one family, if something happens to a grandparent, that the different children and their families deal differently. So a lot of that, again, has to do with the quality of the relationships. How well supported do you feel with your connections to within the family and outside? Another very big part is how much humor. Can you as a family say, oh my, this is happening? But humor reflects a a really good level of communication and connection. So families who are able to discuss and have respectful relationships, families who can use humor, and families who can focus on positives as well as the negatives that are happening. So they see that the glass is actually half full rather than half empty. They have more family resilience. So much of what we're learning now, we see the basis of it, the seeds of it, are planted and nourished in these most important years that we're talking about.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clinton. So there we have it. We so often think of stress as an adult problem, but it's not. It's a family-wide issue, and we can work together to ease the pressure. Thanks again to you, Dr. Clinton. And to all the parents out there, don't forget to watch our next video. We'll be asking Dr. Clinton about teens and difficult situations.